My other feelings is that if people understood more about their relationship with animals, they get more out of their own life.
Hey, I'm Emma, and welcome to Human Animals, the podcast where we explore the deep, complex, and often surprising relationships between people and the animals that share our world. In each episode, I'll invite a guest to dive into the bonds that unite us with the creatures we live alongside. Whether they are big or small, pets or wildlife, we'll unpack the ways animals shape our lives and challenge our understanding of what it means to be human. Join me on this journey where every episode is a reflection of the ties that bind us all. Sue is somebody I knew had to be on the podcast from the start, and I know you probably have your doubts about animal communicators. I have too, but I promise she is the real deal. She doesn't have social media. She doesn't know anything about you or your animal before you talk. I was introduced to her because I wanted help with Miko, and boy does she help. She said things that only I would know. And since then, she has talked with all of my animals, including the pigs, and so many friends and families, animals, and they have all said she's incredible. Through these conversations, she has given me some really important insights into my relationship with animals, how we view them, and just how the world works in a way. We get into it in this episode, and also her experience having this gift and living amongst animals herself. I hope you enjoy it. Fun fact, I have my own small business called Miko's Choice, which is the sponsor for this episode because it's my business, this is my podcast, and I can make the rules. In all seriousness though, Miko's Choice offers high-quality CBD products for all animals. Dogs, horses, pigs, cats, you name it, I have them covered. I used my background in animal science and cannabis to bring these products to life, and I'm beyond thrilled to see how they help improve animal health and wellness. They're also inspired by my personal animals and my own journey through breaking my back, recovering, and getting my dog through cancer. So there's a lot of love behind this business. Feel free to check it out at mikoschoice.com and use code HUMANANIMALS for a discount. If you have any questions, email me anytime, info@mikoschoice.com. That's MIKKOSCHOICE. Thanks. Hi, Sue. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, I'm happy to. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited. Honestly, when I started this podcast, I was like, Sue is one of the people that I need to have on here.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I love to get the word out.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I think this topic of animal communication is really interesting because a lot of people have some mixed feelings about it, you know, whether they like believe in it or I think that's the main thing, whether they believe in it or not. And I felt that in a little bit before I met you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I find that people just have no idea and they have, ideas based on maybe Disney putting out movies with showing animals but animating their mouths. And so they know that's not real. Mm-hmm. So, and then also I will tell you that some people have ideas that it's like voodoo or something because it's basically a mystery, but it's not. And it's actually very common. Mm-hmm. And actually in the Bible, there's many references to listen to the animals too. I can tell you one is, and I'm going to look away, it's Job 12:7-10, talks about, but ask the animals. And those were the days when people were more in tune to nature. We have it in us, but we get so bombarded by other stuff. But it is really not a mystery. Yeah. And we all have the ability to be somewhat better in tuned. Mm-hmm. The other thing I will say is that you will see your relationship change when you express to the animals that you do know that you can hear them. You may not get all the details, but they will keep trying, I feel, too, to get whatever they need across. Yeah.
That's very cool. So how did you first realize that you could do this?
So my recollection is when I remember hearing the animals when, gosh, I want to say around 4 years old or so. I was very young and I had cats. And this particular cat wasn't doing well. And I can remember hearing that it was not feeling well and trying, all I remember exactly was hearing this cat talk to me that it wasn't feeling well. And then I remember trying to get my parents to pay attention. And then I can remember bumping into other animals and and it was like almost a voice in my head.
Okay.
And then there was times when honestly, they just were not saying huge amounts, but they were just telling me about their lives or that they were asking me who I was. But that's what I do remember. And I also thought that everybody was hearing them.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
Then when I started verbalizing a little more, that's when I realized that no, it was, it's sort of like it got to a point where people, you probably heard parents say, oh, my kid has an imaginary friend.
Yes.
But no, it was basically hearing them. And as I got older, I got into horses. And then I started expressing to my mom more that I was hearing them. And not only that, I was receiving images from them, which is another form that you can use. It's all part of your intuition, which we all have. And I was showing horses when I was young in high school. And a lot of times I would ride horses I didn't know. And if they were not following along with me, I decided to start visualizing to them what I wanted them to do. And it came about. And the biggest, light moment for me was then finally my mom did tell me about a book called Kinship with All Life by J. Allen Boone. And he had taken care of the first movie dog called Strongheart. And gosh, I want to say the book was written in the 1950s. And this dog named Strongheart, he had been in the first movies. He actually been in World War II. And he learned how to communicate.
That's okay.
That's my landline. Okay, so Kinship with All Life. And my mom this is so interesting. She had a hard copy because they had lived near Hollywood. This was before I was even born. And somehow she actually met this guy and he signed the book.
Oh, cool.
And she's like, you should read this. And basically he tells about how he had to watch Strongheart for the producers. They were going out of town. And he had these ideas that when a dog comes over, they sleep on the floor. But then Strongheart, he was a German Shepherd. He insisted upon sleeping on his bed and always with his butt at J. Allen Boone's face and head towards the door. And he's like, no, this isn't going to work. But anyhow, so he kept insisting, but Strongheart would turn right around. Then one day, Strongheart got off the bed, walked over to the door. He actually showed him physically, this is why I do it this way. Because then what came to the man was that he had to keep an eye on where someone might come in that would be a threat, meaning the door and the window were like this way. So he always wanted to be facing that. Anyhow, it's a great book. It just made me realize, and what he realized was that Strongheart did send him images.
Okay.
That's how he really did get a lot of the information. so that book did start me on my way.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's very cool. And how did your parents react when you would vocalize these things? Did they encourage you or shut it down?
Well, after a certain point, no, I was encouraged.
Cool.
Yeah, I was encouraged. So they didn't, because things were working. Also, I mean, they saw the results, and that's where I found my success myself in the business. Is people, I've gotten to a point where, hey, if someone doesn't believe me, it's on them. Because all I know is that it is there, it works, and there are results. There is healing. Now, humans may not get everything they want because there's some things you just can't fix. You're not supposed to. But yeah, so anyhow, but yeah, they were supportive.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that made a huge difference.
It did. Because to be honest with you, school was difficult for me.
Yeah.
In those days, they didn't realize more of dyslexia, things like that, which I found out later I was. So to have an area that I felt like I was succeeding in, was helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And so how was I'm assuming you had pets growing up, right? Or like you said, you rode horses. Yeah.
We had animals forever that I can remember, dogs, cats, and actually they would come to me, and I can remember I lived in Covina Hills. That's where I grew up in California, and we lived at a cul-de-sac. And a lot of times, sadly, we'd hear a car, and then there'd be a dog.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So we ended up, I actually would just they needed a home, and we'd rehome them and things like that. So yeah, I've had them all my life.
Yeah. And how was your relationship with them growing up, if you could communicate with them?
There was just a knowing.
Huh.
So how do I say, there wasn't, they were always great. It was always I was always very close. And even when I had instances where I didn't know what happened or where they went, somehow it did come together that they gave me information that something had happened to them. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think people have this maybe idea of like communicating with animals, talking with animals, to be like a language back and forth, like you're having like a sort of verbal conversation in your head, but it sounds like that's not really the case. Like it's more sort of maybe comes to you in like little snippets and little pictures and stuff, and you kind of formulate it together. Is that true? Or how does
definitely it is not. That's why I tell people it is not in long drawn out sentences, because that's not how they communicate. It is basically in bits and pieces and feelings, and or a quick image of something. Some animals have shown me, when I've worked on lost animals, a quick image of where they're at, if they're stuck inside something or under something. But they don't go, well, I'm over at the neighbors stuck in their garage.
Right.
It is bits and pieces. And there literally is a translation that does occur, because I have to put it together how they sent it to me.
Right.
But the big thing is staying open, to it all. Now, I have found people can project their own stuff on people, and that causes problems, because sometimes people don't want to hear how the animal might want things.
Oh, sure. I can believe that.
Yeah. I mean, animals are pretty forgiving though too. So, and go with the flow.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, totally.
And so when you're just like around your animals or in nature, with wildlife, are you sort of bombarded with this information, or how does that work?
Yes, I would say in the beginning. So as I grew up, and then I did marry young, had children, I was always hearing the animals and had relationships, but it was later when I was in my 30s that then that I had an incident with one of my dogs that was like an epiphany to, okay, this is what I really need to do. Become an animal communicator. But in the beginning, I would get bombarded. And honestly, I found it difficult. And I didn't even realize I was picking up people too.
Oh.
Because people broadcast their stuff too.
That's interesting.
Right. And we may not even realize. Sometimes we don't realize we're all very psychic beings and stuff overflows. So I have learned through the years, because once I decided to become a professional animal communicator, that's when I really learned how the information comes in. It is communicating telepathically, meaning long distance thought transference. But you also learn to make sure that it's sort of like getting on the right channel. You're not going to open up to a bunch of channels.
Okay.
You're going to have focus on who you want to communicate. So I may go into places where there's people with their dogs, and I may hear something briefly, but then I have to keep moving on too. So, I mean, I have heard comments, you might say, from some animals throwing out things. And I will tell you, there are some, I was especially found this, Emma, at horse shows with horses that aren't used to people acknowledging them that way.
Yeah.
They're a little bit taken back.
I bet.
There's sort of especially because their relationship is so almost commercial like that. Yeah, it's so, but, and it's interesting. There's a huge change in their behavior when they realize you hear them.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if it's sort of like therapy for them, almost like, I'm being heard finally. You know, somebody understands, somebody sees me.
Well, I like to use this example. It would be like, let's say you've been with someone that you lived with in the same house, and for years you would just pass each other. But when you really were having problems, they always kept their back to you and never acknowledged you. Just, you were like passing ships in the night. And then think of the difference when they finally turned around and just acknowledged that you were saying something.
Yeah.
It would be huge. And so that's what I found a lot of times, even though you may not get it all, the fact that you're acknowledging that they're a living being with a soul and feelings, and they do ask questions. Animals do want to know things that are what's going on in certain instances. So, and I found a lot of times it depends also on who their human is, because as you know, a lot of times the animals can reflect their human too, pick up what they're like, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I bet you hear a lot of maybe tough things to hear from them.
Yes, sometimes they do, or sometimes people, obviously they rescue dogs or cats, etc., horses. They want to know a little sense on what did they experience prior.
Right.
And I found some will share briefly, or they will explain why they have a certain behavior now, in the now, and that it's because of abuse in their past. They don't focus on it as much, but it did change them, like a human would.
Yeah, how can it not?
Right. And so they might share it. They don't then go over it all and like constantly crying about it. It's just that they are changed. And so then the human is like, I don't understand why they're so scared or aggressive, etc. But there's reasons behind it. And it takes time.
Yeah, there's always reasons. I remember the first session I had with you, which is when I was like, oh, she's the real deal, was with my horse Miko. I don't know if you remember. This was a long time ago. And one of the questions that I had for you was what happened in his past, because he had these issues with the saddle, and I wanted to know what that was about, just like I'm sure other people come to you with questions. And one thing you said was, and this was when I knew, I was like, oh, she's for real, because like you don't have social media, you're not really online or anything like that. And I didn't tell you anything prior. So our story is that I got him from the BLM corrals, and then we were separated. And then when I found him again, he came back to me with all of these intense issues from whatever happened to him before. And what you said was, well, he has this period of where he's blocked it out, basically, which is like kind of what you're saying. Like something has happened, but he's not really wanting to acknowledge it. And then you said, but when he saw you again, and that's when I was like, whoa, how did she know that? He started to feel better and liked what we were doing, and so on and so forth. So I just thought it was interesting how he described his before was kind of like a blackout.
Right.
And we've also talked with Brian, my dog. Again, same questions. I wanted to know what happened to him before. And he was more willing to share with you. And and we both thought it was funny at the time, because he said that he was with somebody else on some other farm, but he didn't like them. He didn't respect them. So he would just leave all the time.
Oh.
And then I was like, oh, well, that's probably why they got rid of him, because
he took off so much.
You just leave. Yeah, but he doesn't do that with me.
No, there's always a reason. That's the other thing I tell people. There's always something up. If they're even, yes, for sure, some dogs, obviously, it's in their breed, right?
Sure.
More. But then a lot of times they can feel that they're either not enough room for them, or they're going outside of the home for a reason, because they're not feeling like they fit in.
Interesting.
Or also just plain old exercise too, I found.
Yeah.
So they just need more stimulation as well, some of them. Yeah.
I could believe that for sure.
Yeah. But anyhow, But I should say too that my beginnings with becoming an animal communicator, I did do classes with Penelope Smith, who you might say was like the first recognized animal communicator. She has a lot of books. And so I did do a lot of workshops with her to really narrow things down, because you can kind of go all over. And like I was telling you, a lot of it is getting focused.
Yeah.
And when someone, that's why I also ask some of my readings, do you have more than one animal? Because if you don't, and for myself, I personally like to have a photo and a little brief info, because other animals can chime in and you can get off your mark.
Yeah, I believe it.
And not sure. So that can happen.
Yeah, that's, I remember that happened in one of our sessions too. I think maybe when you were talking to Brian or something, but, and again, you didn't know this, but I have pet pigs, and you were like, you were like, you were like, is there another animal that's like small and like darts around, I was like, yes.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And see, it's not necessarily that they'll say, oh, I'm this. They don't always identify exactly even the species they are.
Interesting.
And for me, it's just, I can feel something else happening, that there's a distraction even. So yeah, that can happen as well. Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. Do you feel like they know, quote unquote, like what they are, at least to us, Like a horse is a horse, a dog is a dog.
No, I don't feel they all do.
Ah.
No. Some of them don't have that sense of what their role is,
Okay.
you might say. Some forget that they, like a horse may forget that you're even a human. They often sometimes will, you're like another horse. I found that with cats too, that often cats see you as another big cat.
Yeah.
You know, it depends on certain things, but so they know what they are, I would say, but also where I found issues is with animals that are what do you call it, more puppy mill, you might say. A lot of overbreeding. They're sort of in limbo. And then, but some just like to take on things that might say out of their species because they enjoy it as well. So, yeah.
It's interesting.
But, yeah. And also, again, sometimes some animals can reflect what's going on with the human. And if the human isn't focused or has no clue, then, you know, they look at it like, okay, then I'll just go outside the lines and do my own thing as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can see a lot of behavior things happening from that train of thought.
Right. You know, and one of the things I found is that I have to remind people they aren't humans. Because I have had cases where the person has projected so much of their stuff that it's caused backfired.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, they came in as a dog.
Right.
So they do need a job and need to do what they came in as. And so, you know, that can happen as well. You have to, you know, people, well, you know, there's always something that the person needs help with.
Sure.
But they're looking, you know, so yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people expect to find like the answer to what's going on with their animal, and maybe they do and maybe they don't.
Well, I'll tell you too, I've had instances where people have adopted, and bless their hearts for taking on other people's problems, you might say.
Yeah.
But I had a client once that had adopted a cat, and she was looking for what you would call a cat that was going to sit on her lap, a lap cat, and be huggy and all this. And boy, this cat had no way.
No
way. And she wanted me to communicate to the cat that the cat should do that.
Oh.
And I said, well, here's what I'm getting. The cat had not the best experiences as a kitten and being handled. And the more that she forced herself on the cat that, hey, you should be this way, the more it drove the cat away. And
that's a lesson.
Right. And I said, you have to let go of are you saying that you're not going to love this cat if it doesn't mold to your idea? She said, oh, no, I do love the cat. And I said, well, then you have to let go of that idea, see what happens. Because often, as soon as we let go of things and become passive, you might say, about it, that will make them feel safer to maybe go outside of their comfort zone too. But, you know, sometimes I tell people, you know, they never may change.
Yeah.
Just like humans. And we have to be okay with that.
Yeah, we do. And that's a tough thing for some people to realize. Right.
Exactly. And some of those people may never call me back again.
Yeah.
because, you know, that's, you know, it depends. You know, they may not want to keep hearing that either.
Right. Well, yeah, people want to hear something that makes them feel good. But, you know, I really respect that you're telling them the truth and you're telling them what you get. And that's all you can do, really. And then what they do from there is their deal.
Exactly. No, that's definitely. And I'm okay with that too.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you said something earlier that caught my attention, which was how an animal comes in as. And I think, tell me if I'm wrong, but I think you're referring to like when they're born and they come into the world and they come into like their bodies as a dog, a horse, a pig, what have you. And I remember at the end of our session with my horse Miko, the first one, we sort of like got a little off track and we're sort of just talking at the end. And I said, I just really feel like there's something more to this relationship. And you told me that our souls actually knew each other before. And that I think you used that phrase, probably came in, in these two separate forms. I'm a horse, me a human, and then have like met again.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. And our two souls like met again here on Earth, and that's how we have this like deep, really deep connection. Soulmate like, and you said that's sort of where the term soulmates come from, and that was a moment for me where I was like, oh, this makes so much sense on a lot of different levels. Just that term. I think there's a lot of terms out there that we say that we don't really understand where they came from.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that was a moment where it really hit me like, oh yeah, I understand.
And often remember too, soulmates don't mean that life's hunky-dory. Soulmates can be a challenge too. And that's their purpose.
Oh.
A lot of times soulmates come in and this is, in human relationships, because we're supposed to be learning something too. So there can be some friction or things that we go, oh my gosh, why is this happening? It's hard. But because somewhere they're like your best teacher too.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I say that about him all the time. He's my best teacher because it was really challenging in the beginning. It really was, and I was trying to work through all of the trauma that he experienced and the reason that I came to you to get more answers. And yeah, it was incredibly difficult, but now, it's really great. And I feel like we have this really deep understanding and things are a lot better.
And like incident, like what we might say is a really hard and creates problems, or one of the things that is on my website is the story about one of my dogs, Betsy, that got me going is we were out in the field pasture with her brother, and suddenly I noticed Betsy had disappeared. And I thought, what the heck? Where did she go? We're all like 5-acre lots and stuff. And I asked the brother, where's your sister? And I heard him say, I don't know. And so I decided this was my opportunity. I could feel stress and that I needed to hurry. And I remember thinking, okay, so now is the time to practice. And the biggest thing is to get into a place where I had to let go of any perceived ideas and get quiet. And that's the time when I remember looking across the way into other people's property, a tree. And I remember it moving a certain way, sort of like in that movie. If you ever saw it, was a while ago with John Travolta, Phenomena, where, his thing was different with what had happened to him. But I felt the tree was asking me to come to it. And I thought there's no signs, no nothing. So I did. And as I got closer to this tree, all of a sudden I heard this heavy, labored breathing. Still couldn't see anything. But when I got right to the tree trunk, there was an abandoned sewer line. Somebody had just put like particle board over the top, and Betsy had fallen straight down.
Oh God.
Like, oh gosh, 15 feet. And it was so dry and hot that summer that it had that horrible sewer smell. So she was struggling to breathe.
Great.
But we got my husband, we all came and got her out.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a panic situation.
Yeah.
And sad, but in those moments, but it also, to give you an example, a lot of these things, you might say, hardships happen too, because it sent me leaps forward into what I do.
Mm-hmm.
And I have many stories like that. My animals saying, here, I'm going to help you out with what you do. And I used to joke because I raised 2 huskies. They were siblings. And I'd never had huskies before, but I used to joke that they came into my life to get me really good at doing lost animals, because they literally loved that. I could hear them scheming at night on how they might get out of the gate, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did they put me to the test. When, so I'm just giving an example that, or even instances where sadly you might lose an animal to an accident very young.
Mm-hmm.
They may have different ideas of what they're going to do, but it always sends us forward in growth, some one way or another.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Good and bad experiences do that. So is that how you decided to start offering sessions to people? And were you nervous about that? Like how that would be received?
I was and I wasn't. It's like, because I had so many instances of proof myself. And actually my husband, who, as that engineer thinking, he sort of wasn't sure about it at first. But then when I found Betsy and I had found another cat, etc., he started coming around because he saw it actually come into action, the proof of it, and changes. And he's, really come around, of course, support me. I feel what is the hardest for me and is if someone just looks at it as, what do you call, entertainment. Then I know they're not serious, because, animals know even that when you're not, and I would, it's that old saying, if you aren't sure if somebody is on the up and up, let your dog be around them.
Right.
They'll tell you that, that you can't hide your true feelings. Someone. So, but I was nervous because, a lot of times people put me in the beginning, I let them put me, what do you call it? Like test. But then I got rid of that.
That's good.
Because I thought, you either really want to know or you don't. It's on you,
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, again, that's all that you can offer them.
And I feel like I had a lot of what I feel over the years has been to let people know that it's not mystery. It's not voodoo. It is a natural thing. We get information all the time from our animals, but we may not recognize it as them. Humans often, think they're the originators of all their thoughts that come in their head, and they're not.
Interesting.
The animal actually, like a lot of times people just get up, go open the door, let their dog out, or, oh, you're hungry. And that wasn't really the human's idea. That actually was the animal put it in your head.
Oh, okay.
But see, we do things so automatically or natural. We don't give that credit, you might say.
That's interesting. Yeah, I don't think people would ever.
No, and when I point that out and people can reflect back, then that's when they kind of go, okay, it's not like magic or, and yes, they do communicate physically for sure.
Right.
But then there are those things where, they don't always, or people will say, why are they're trying to tell me something. They're staring at me all the time. But here's the other thing. People's minds go crazy and start thinking it's going to be like these formulas to nuclear bomb, or I don't know, but it's like, it's not. It's just called, the animals love to just hang out, and they send you info like, hey, I just love being with you. Are we there yet? For instance, it can mean certain things. But the first thing I tell people is, when you see them looking at you, what's your first feeling? That's it. It's when humans go back over it and reanalyze, it gets them into trouble.
Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I think what you mentioned earlier about just getting quiet,
right,
is a key. Just getting quiet and sort of internalizing. And yeah, I could imagine like separating somebody's thoughts and feelings and their projections would be really difficult. I find that a lot in the training help that I do with people, is there's a lot of the human experiences being put on the animal, and that's not really what's happening here. And you have to think about like, well, what is their ideal?
Right. Well, and animals, it's amazing. I tell you, we owe them. We are so in debt to them because they put up with so much, and they are willing, and they're forgiving, and they stay I always find animals stay positive too, even though not the best things have happened to them. But, they chose their people too. So, they still would go along with it. I found that when it's not the right situation, something may happen too that takes them out of it, but I do feel that, and they can be sarcastic too. Yeah. I mean, I've heard, and one, I'll never forget being in a feed store, and a woman had a very small dog. Like, I want to say, oh no, it was the owner's, and it was a Yorkie, and she just loved to sit there behind the register.
Yeah.
And some ladies came in and were talking suddenly, and baby talked to, oh, what a cute little dog, and went on, and that dog just stared, and I could literally hear that dog say to, like, oh, I won't say what the dog really gave me the impression, but was like, very like, I'm not a baby.
Like, don't talk to me that way.
Don't talk, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It didn't make any mannerism. It just was very statuesque too. But I could literally hear this dog basically saying, you guys are idiots for talking to me that. And then, I thought I was laughing actually, because, I'm getting this, but so they definitely do have ideals on things too.
Yeah. No, I remember in our session with Patrick, my pig, you're like, he's really funny.
Yeah. Or like, what I also get a kick out of is when, let's say, a horse doesn't like, sometimes they get impatient in the cross ties, and the horse will start pawing.
Yeah.
And a lot of kids are stop that. I can literally hear the horse say, I'm going to keep doing this because it's irritating them. You know what I mean? And I thought, if they only knew that it's like a game.
Right.
To a point. The more they get agitated, the human, I mean, and say, stop it or whatever, it's anyhow.
Yeah, I can see that being true, definitely, because then you get riled up more, and it just becomes this whole thing, and it's a lot better to just ignore them.
Well,
in
and
some
then
cases,
they are looking to have the person hurry up or change something too. And so, and this is the sad part though, because a lot of horses do internalize eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think about the horses that become shut down?
Well, it's sad.
Yeah.
It is really sad. And that you asked earlier about me feeling bombarded. What's hard for me is when, in these certain instances, the way they're used, and they're shut down and they're just become mechanical, you might say.
Yeah.
They're void. They go inward. And this it's like if you've ever seen a person do that had trauma and that they're just existing. So, yeah. And so often I want to avoid those venues.
Yeah, I bet.
And because that's hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how has this gift, this ability to talk with them, how has it shaped your relationship with like your personal animals and animals in general, would you say?
Oh gosh, it's deep. I would say very deep. I will say this, it's kind of funny. They know I can hear them.
Yeah.
And so let me give you an example. So I have 2 horses here at home and they know I can hear them. But I had the one horse who he wanted to go out into the pasture, but I couldn't let him yet. Boy, did he just keep badgering the heck. And I don't mean just physically. He just kept sending me that same question.
Yeah.
And so I have to laugh because they know I can hear them. So they'll just, like a kid, they'll keep on asking and asking. So I have had instances. I have one of my dogs who she has lab in her. So she loves to eat. And I joke that she always wants a second breakfast. And, I don't find that animals are deceiving or lie, but she'll do this. She'll ask me about like breakfast again. And I go, I'm pretty sure, you ate already. My husband often feeds him breakfast. And she'll sort of skirt that, answering me, but I can feel it, but she's going to try anyway. Because I would say like they're opportunists too.
Sure.
So they know that I will hear them. So yeah, definitely. It's kind of funny. So I would say that is sort of, I get kicks out of it too. But it makes it, the only thing I would say is that you are so close that sometimes you take things for granted too, how close you really are. There's no separation, I feel, either. I don't always see myself. I mean, I'm human and they're an animal, but I also know the communication is, like I said before, it's not like I have to stop and think anymore about hearing them either or feel. Right.
Yeah, it's probably so second nature.
It is.
Especially really with your own, because you're living with them and you're around them a lot.
Right. But no, I've always been really, really close and it's helped me. And the only thing I would say is honestly, sometimes it can make it hard with human relationships because animals, are so genuine too, that when I, come up in certain instances where, like I can feel if someone's lying. Or like if you ever have to deal with construction workers doing projects, they give you BS stories. And I have less tolerance in a way because I'm hearing them say one thing, but I hear the truth behind it.
Okay.
So that has made some of my human relationships sometimes more challenging.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I want them just to say straight out. Well, that's the thing with animals. They don't skirt it. They say it.
Right.
Or,
And would you say that's because they're more in the moment than we are and they don't have these other agendas?
No, they're not doing, they're sort of like, it's just the facts. I mean, yes, they have feelings, but they're, they don't have all this other hidden agenda behind it as to why they have to do that. But I was giving you an example of my one dog because even though she was kind of saying, yes, I did eat, I'm going to try anyway.
Right.
I know you're listening, but yeah.
Yeah, but that's such an innocent thing.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It's like opportunity there. But
And of course she wants more food.
But and my other feelings is that if people understood more about their relationship with animals, they get more out of their own life. I feel like it would be more thrilling, or they wouldn't do the things they do today with what we do in excess too, because we've gone overboard too in some instances with our animals, which I feel in a huge imbalance too. Eventually animals show that with breeding and things like that. And also and also just being educated on what animals do and what they need.
Right.
I'm surprised at how much people don't even know basics, like even about cats.
Yes, I know. Me too. I run into a lot of people that like have behavior problems with their cat. I'm like, well, have you tried giving them more litter boxes or ways that they can get up and around the room without touching the floor? And so many people, they just don't think about that and they don't realize these things. And once they do, it makes a huge difference.
Well, and also I feel the overpopulation, they don't realize that is just knowledge about, the heat cycles, and the cats that's why there's so many, too. You just keep on going. And also I found when people run into problems with even their dogs, it's because they didn't do their research on, you don't get a husky and live in an apartment.
Right.
That kind of instance. It's like they do have jobs, or an Aussie or that kind of thing. They become neurotic if they can't do what's in their DNA to do.
Yeah, I think that's 100% agree with that. And along those lines, the riding horses, I often like, do they like this, or like, how do they feel about it? And I'm sure it's so interesting for you to be somebody who has this ability to talk to them and also ride them, and get their input and thoughts on it. And I remember I asked you that about Miko because he had so many things going on. I was like, does he just want to be like out in the field in a sanctuary, not doing anything? And you were like, no, actually, once you can sort of like get through what he's nervous about, he actually really enjoys being out with you. And again, you're like, he really enjoys when you take him on hand walks on the trails, which is again something that I was like, how would she know that? And it really made me feel better about like moving forward in what we were doing.
Good.
Because I felt that he really enjoyed it. And I did see that in him, and it's true today. Like once we get through these little things, he seems to have a great time. So how is it for you being able to have these conversations and then go ride your horse? Are there ever days where they're like, well, I'm not really feeling it, and you're just like, okay.
Well, usually when I'm not really feeling, or when they're not really feeling it, honestly, it's because I'm not too. I found, and I found that, a lot of times if there's something else that you haven't addressed.
Okay.
Too, that either, they're sore, for instance,
sure,
or there's other circumstances coming up, or they didn't get out before. But if you're addressing and making them feel comfortable, the environment around them feels comfortable. I found that they are good with that, and if you treat them well in the process, like, the saddle fits them.
Yeah.
The bridle is working. Things like that. Then they're agreeable. I do feel it's a different story though with those that might be like the Mustangs, who may not have had. A lot of it boils down to also the beginnings and that beginning handling and training with them too. But they do start saying, oh, okay, I'll join up with you. Literally, it is.
Yeah.
But then some of them, I've had to change courses when I had a certain idea that this was what I was going to do. And, I felt like you end up just butting heads and you have to rethink things. That's really hard for people.
Yes, it is.
So,
but I think that ties into the idea of like getting quiet and trying to understand what they are telling you. And maybe, as you said before, it's not so much the human's idea. Like, let's say you're out on a trail ride and your horse is like, hey, I really just don't want to go forward anymore, because maybe they sense that there's a predator up there or some sort of issue. And then, it comes back to us. Like, do we force them to go forward, or are we just like, all right, whatever, we'll turn around?
And, when I have forced situations, in particular, trying to go forward, it's because I found out later and I was picking something up, but that they weren't really feeling that well. And then a lot of times, some of them are lacking confidence.
Yeah.
People make these assumptions they can force that. And I don't believe that. And then, or they may force them to, and then next time around, they may not want to do it.
Right.
So, it depends. But and I have to remind people that horses are flight animals and their natural instinct is to ask questions later.
Yes.
And a lot of times people forget that. They're not trying to literally dump you. And sometimes they just retreat into their instinct. Same with any animal.
Sure.
What they're going to do, because they are still an animal.
Yes.
And that's where people forget, I feel.
Yeah, they're just trying to survive.
Right. They want them to reason all the time. I found humans, and I have to stop them going, no, in that moment, it's survival too.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, that's very true.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, and animal communication has saved a lot of people from doing things, procedures and things like that, listening to the animal when they may not have wanted something, or instances I've had where the horse, for instance, was still not behaving and cranky. They thought they were addressing it when I had a woman with the horse, and I said, no, he's still talking about pain here in the back when it wasn't as obvious. He did have something in his back end, but they decided to recheck his stomach and something in the hind end. Well, based on the reading, she decided to check more area in his back, and it turned out he had kissing spines.
Oh, yeah.
Which he was right. He was saying that, to me anyway, that he was still feeling back pain. And he was trying to tell him, but they were looking in one area, not the whole area. And he let him know.
Yeah.
So,
well, I remember, so the reason that, we connected was when I got Pete, my Zorse. I had Dr. Stephanie come out, and of course I had all these questions about him. Where did he come from? What's his story? What's his training like? Blah, blah. And she came out, and we we couldn't really do anything with him. But she was like, you know what? You should connect with Sue. She might be able to tell you some things about his stories. And she told me one example of what you're bringing up, which is that she had a horse that was colicking really badly, one of her clients' horses. And they were deciding, do we put the horse on the trailer, go to the hospital, go to surgery, or do we just put them down? And I forget why exactly it wasn't like a clear answer either way. I'm sure people struggle with that question all the time.
Right.
But she, called you in that moment, and you spoke to the horse and sort of laid it out there for them, I guess, or tried to hear what they were saying. And the horse said, no, I want to fight. I want to live, I want to try, or something along those lines. And so they ended up going on the trailer and going to the hospital. And I don't know what happened to the horse after that. But I just remember like that's such a crucial question also, like you say, that I think people struggle with. And if you can just ask, what do you feel about this? Because we can put an animal through so much, and there is this saying of like, well, they have to want it too, and they have to want to fight, and some do more than others, I think, just like people.
Or they do see a lot of times that they might pull through. I've had instances where they're like, no, they don't see themselves making it through something. And the people have gone ahead and they don't make it past the surgery.
Well,
so there's, it's just one of those things, because the person gets in their head, or the vet might really, I'm not poo-pooing the vets at all, but
sure.
If the animal, like us, we have more ideas than, because we know how ultimately our bodies might go. And which I feel animals really do.
Yeah.
And so, because that is a big thing I help people with, is if they feel their animal wants help crossing over, or do they want to go on their own, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And just because an animal is struggling, for instance, with something, eyesight or hearing or whatever, also isn't necessarily mean they're done either. So,
yeah, that's an important thing for people to understand.
Right.
Because I was just talking to somebody the other day who, the vet said that they had a 16-year-old dog whose eye needs to be removed, and she was having all these feelings about, I'm going to blind my dog, and this is going to be horrible, and which I totally understand. But it just would be interesting to talk to that dog and be like, what is your perspective? And like, would you actually feel better to have this eye that is maybe painful for you? I don't know.
Right. And a lot of times it's not like I have to, I don't diagnose, really. I just say, this is what they're feeling. And I do my best at saying, would you be okay if you had a little more help?
Yeah.
Yes. And this is where I have to communicate really through visions. They aren't going to understand all these technical terms and etc. So I do my best also then to show them a feeling of the outcome, possibly. But then they can let me know on what they feel. It's just like some animals say, I'm done. I'm really, I do want that help. That kind of thing. And others say, no, I want to do this on my own. I need that time. And I personally feel that it's nice if we're able to give them certain options on moving on. But, that is the main thing, is that if you are listening to or giving them that chance, I feel.
Right. Yeah. You've personally helped me with this too. My past dog, Stringer, he was super old and he was declining. And I remember we had a session because I was like struggling.
Yeah.
With choice. And I was actually out of town. I was in New York. My grandma had just passed away, and I was cleaning up her apartment and doing all that. And Stringer was on the downhill, and my partner at the time called me and he was like, I don't know. He can't really get up that well. And I was like, okay, let me talk to Sue. and we did when I was in New York, and you said, oh, this was really interesting. He's sort of between the worlds or the realms, whatever you said. Like when he sleeps, he kind of
somewhat here and then somewhat on the other, like looking towards the other side.
Yeah. And then you said, but he wonders where you are. I was like,
okay, yeah,
interesting. And so I left. I was like, hey, family, you finish with this, like, you good, like, I gotta go back and be with him for this time. And we did help him eventually, like the day after I got back. And that conversation with you was so helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah. No, it's not easy. And I do feel like it's nice that we have that option to help them if we need to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I remember like a few days later, we had another session and you connected with him, you know,
On the other side.
on the other side. And
Yeah.
again, that was just so helpful because you're like, oh, because one of the things with him was his body was just, it failed him.
Right.
In a lot
and
of
they
ways.
feel like a prisoner almost.
Yeah. And it was a hard decision for me because his mind was, I felt like sharp in there. And I think so many people go through that. And hearing like the before and the after was just so helpful.
Oh, good. Yeah, no, it does. And they do a lot of times relate that they like their soul just jumps out of that body that wasn't serving them anymore. Yeah. Like a lot of humans too look back and go, good riddance, because, it wore out.
Yeah.
Can only take so much.
Definitely.
So, and that's, some ways science and everything we've done helps, but then there's a point where you can only fix it so many times.
It's true. You can only do so much. Yeah.
Time to move on. Shape.
Right.
Different.
Right. And another thing you said in the after session was when he pops into your mind, or when you think of him or whoever, whatever animal, like that's them being around you. And I found a lot of comfort in that too. And I think, it makes sense, and maybe it relates to that sort of like what you were talking about earlier, that unconscious, like, oh, I'm going to go open the door because this reason, again, it's them influencing our mind and our thoughts, but we don't necessarily tie that together.
Right. And a lot of times people feel like, oh, I'm just thinking it. Too, a lot of times. And then I always say, no, not necessarily. And then even if you are, oh, well, too, it's a good thing.
Right.
I feel like people just have to get outside of everything they see has to be proven. Like they have to see and touch it. No, that's not true, because when we even think about an animal or a person that we love, it's not, we may act like we love them, but those things are not necessarily seen or touched. It's that impression, those feelings of that are spiritual, you might say. They never die. That I feel like humans just have to get outside of that box, you might say. It's unfortunate because I feel like, I used to joke that when kids go to school, they deprogram them against their natural selves.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
And everything is a book. I'm not saying those are wrong, but we have gotten to a society of not trusting our instincts anymore either.
Yeah.
Or like what people used to say, your gut feelings. Because also with all the technology and the phones, those are all what I call interference.
Oh, definitely.
For our natural abilities that we have.
Yeah.
So, and 100%. It could save us lots if we take those moments. And I literally say to people, and my kids tease me all the time, I'm a tree hugger, because nature really is healing. Hanging out with your animals, doing absolutely nothing.
That's like one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah. Because there's a sense of calm and quiet, and they're grounding as nature is grounding. And it can be so helpful. I'm not saying then you sometimes can face the world with all its other stuff too. But it is really something we crave. I feel people don't get enough of.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah.
I totally agree.
Anyhow, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're close to this hour.
Oh, okay. Oh my gosh. And I have so many stories. I
bet.
Of instances of things that have blown people away. And it's not, like I said, it's just because that's what I got. And mind you, sometimes things can be different than what we think, but
Yeah.
somewhere down the line, it will unfold. Or like I always tell people, if they really want to get that message through to you, it will come too.
I believe that.
Yeah.
In one way or another.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think they are a blessing one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
And I always tell people, what's it going to hurt too?
Sure.
It's going to enhance, to open up to it. And so,
yeah,
because what I found, and I'll just end this, what I found, you were asking me earlier, when I started opening up and communicating with the animals, it did actually help my human relationships too.
Mm.
And understanding and not reacting, like doing the knee-jerk reaction out of fear. It, sort of helping me be more, wait, what's the truth behind it? Instead of using, those fear emotions. Yeah. Or maybe I will get something that says, hey, you got to be careful. Oh, okay. I'll be careful then. I'll go slow. But I tell you, we would all have a lot less things if we listened more to our intuition and just in our lives and with our animals. Boy, it would save us a lot of hurt.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That gut feeling is huge.
It is. It really is. And boy, the animals can help us if we would let them.
That's true. Yeah, I firmly believe that.
So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you for having me. And I enjoyed talking about this. I could go on forever.
Oh, me too. I know. I find it so fascinating. And I hope that this helps people too. Yeah,
me too. Yeah, I hope so. It will, I'm sure. So.
Yeah, I hope so. It's just very interesting. And I just thank you so much for coming to talk about it.
Love it. Yeah. And I always tell people, I don't know. It's like, and also, even if someone isn't sure, then if they even come forward and they ask questions, is good too.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I've sent a lot of friends your way, and every time they're
yes, I know.
This is amazing, like it's so helpful in various different ways, whatever their, answers that they're searching for.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, thank you.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Human Animals. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend. I'll be back next time to dive deeper into the fascinating world of human-animal connections. Until then, take a moment to appreciate the animals in your life and tell them I said hi. You can get to know me and my animals better and see upcoming guests by following @BrianKangle, that's BrianKangal, on Instagram and TikTok. Okay, bye!